Hi everyone, welcome to Training with Kayce, where we explore animal training and living our best lives with animals. I'm Joseph Laughlin, producer of this podcast, and now here's your host, Kayce Covert. Let's get started.
Hey, thank you, Joseph. Hi, everybody. This is Kayce Covert, your host on Training with Kayce, and this is our new podcast. This is our very first podcast, and I'd like to welcome you all. We're going to be discussing everything training, issues about animals in managed care, training techniques, philosophies, technical issues. And I hope that you will let us know what you would like to talk about. You can go right down in the comments, and on the way there, please subscribe and click like. That will help us to get started, and I appreciate it. And let me know what you would like to talk about, or what you think about what is being said, or your pet peeve, or anything else. I'm trying to talk to you, and it helps me if I know who you are. So tell me where you're coming from, tell me what you do, what your connection with animals is, and let's go forward together. So what is the subject of this first podcast? Integrity. I think this is the most important subject in training. And I especially want to reach the ears of up-and-coming trainers. Those of you who are setting your sights and figuring out your strategies for becoming not just trainers, but the best of trainers. And as you set your sights, I hope you'll aim for the stars. And the most important guide star in training, I believe, is integrity. So think about it for a moment. Who do you admire most? Who does the world remember? For one, right now, the world's admiring Zelensky, the leader of Ukraine. Why? Because he had to lead, or has to lead, his country to fight an incredibly scary enemy. And they're fighting to the death. They're fighting not for an idea, but for their lives and their homes. They didn't start this fight. They probably all wanted to run. But Zelensky asked them to fight, probably because they want to fight, right? But he could have sent them to fight, and he could have gone from danger. The U.S. offered him a way out, and what did he say? He said, I don't need a ride, I need weapons or a tank or something like that. He needs them all, right? So he chose to stay with the people of his country fighting for their shared goals. He is collaborating with his people. He is sharing their fate. He's sharing their dangers and their fears and their successes. He's not sending them out to take the risk and sitting back where it's safe. He didn't ask anyone in his country to do anything he wasn't willing to do. If they'll lay their lives down for their country, he's willing to do the same. He's willing to share their risk. If he dies, he will most certainly be remembered. I'll remember him. His people will definitely remember him. Now, this example shows, a way that integrity can build respect and trust. And do you think that maybe Zelensky's people are more willing to follow his suggestions and his orders and to go into battle if they see that he's sharing their risks? I mean, I would believe he certainly believes what he's saying. So trust can be built by showing integrity. And both respect and trust are essential in training and in all forms of leadership, Because training is teaching and leadership and motivation and communication. It's the same. It doesn't matter if you're leading children or adult humans or animals, baby animals, adult animals. It's all the same. Leadership is not bossing others around. It is serving them. It is taking your resources and applying them to get the people that work with you and for you to safety, to better situations, to success, to comfort. It's imparting information that's critical and putting resources at the hands of those that are working with you. And when we do this with animals, the animals are willing to align their purposes with yours. And it's just like we're seeing in the Ukraine. When the leader puts his money where his mouth is, when he says, let's go do this together, and he is committed, they will commit to him. It is the same with your animals. So, how do you get the animals to align with you? First, you have to explain what you're doing and what you want their help in, but then you have to demonstrate that you are worth listening to, that you're actually a good, credible leader, that you have integrity, that you will back your words up with action. That's leadership. So, integrity is a nice way to be, but it's also a lot more than that. And after decades of working with animals, and many of those years, it's always been with big animals, okay, lots of big animals, but also particularly exotic animals. And I think integrity is the foundation of safety with animals. Now, I could even call it a form of life insurance. Now, why would I say that? Because if animals trust you and if they respect you, they're less likely to go after you, to run over you, to bite you, to kill you. So here's one example from my direct experience. My gray seals were initially very aggressive. This was at the National Zoo. But once we got to know each other, they changed and they became very safe, careful, and very friendly even. So one day as I left the exhibit, my hand swinging by my side, a female gray seal that I was passing started to yawn. And as she lazily arched her neck with her yawn, her open teeth inadvertently grazed my fingers. I knew she wasn't trying to bite me, and I didn't even say anything to her about it. She didn't bite. She just touched my fingers with her teeth. But she seemed to be horrified. She was so intent on not biting me that she started gagging and coughing, and she threw her head away from me. I don't think that was because she was afraid I would taste bad. We all can have a tendency to snap our jaws shut. And every once in a while, if you pay attention, if you're just, dozing off to sleep or thinking quietly and your jaws are slack, all of a sudden they'll clamp shut. And sometimes I've heard people call that a fixed action pattern. And then sometimes others will say, oh, there's no such thing. But I'll tell you, there is a thing, and I don't know what we want to call it, but there's a tendency for your jaws to clack shut in certain situations. I've definitely seen it with various kinds of dogs, and I've seen it with animals like gray seals and sea lions. Well, anyway, I think this is what the problem was. I think this animal was afraid that when her teeth touched my hand, she might clap her jaws shut and inadvertently bite me. And I think that's why she reacted that way. You know, like she had already swallowed part of my hand and was trying to cough it up. And the reason I think that is because of an experience I had with my wonderful dog, King, the Wonder Dog. And I'll tell you about that one too. So she didn't, why is it that extreme? I've never had any reason to get after her. In other words, she didn't react like she did from fear that I'd punish her or anything like that. But I think she really didn't want to hurt me. So safety is an important byproduct of integrity. But I promise you I would tell you also the story about King. So when I first got King, he had already bitten 3 people. And he was very young. He was only 6 months old. He didn't even know what he was doing yet. So we started training him and took care of a lot of, issues and so forth. And I was out walking with him at the University of Maryland. And for those of you that know the university, there was a big quad in front of the administration building. And it had openings in the middle of each wall in this quad. And so there were only 4 places where people could come into it. And as I entered one of those openings, I saw there was nobody else there. In fact, there wasn't even anybody to see anywhere. And they were doing some kind of project at the university, and there were 5-foot diameter drains, those conduits, right? The concrete conduits. And I knew King would love to jump up on those conduits. So after I checked to make sure nobody was there, I released him, and he goes bounding across the field. And he's about 200 feet away from me, jumps up on the top. Imagine my horror when a little girl jumps out of one of those conduits. She jumps out, running, screaming, and crying. I don't even know where her parents were. I was petrified. I was horrified. But fortunately, my long years of training did me well, because without even consciously thinking it, I yelled out, "Drop it now!" Now, I didn't say no. I went on the assumption that the, urge or the reaction to pounce upon this little girl, she's probably about 3 to 5 years old, probably about 4 or 5. Anyway, so King was on top of this thing, and the girl explodes out from under him, and he launches, and he's in midair, and I said, "Drop it now!" And he starts clacking his jaws and gagging just like the gray seal did. And he did not touch that little girl. He landed a little to one side, and he came back immediately. That's a fantastic dog. Thank God. That could have been so ugly. Now, I never would have set that up as a test, right? I was way too early for that. But thank goodness that the training was so effective and that he did that so well. But that's where another place where I saw an animal gagging and hacking when they were in a position to bite down on something else. So, what else do we want to say about that? Okay. Oh, I know what it is. Sorry, guys. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is what happens when you don't have integrity. So when you do have integrity, you have animals that align with you and that want to work with you. and you have safety and you have respect. You have the respect from the animals. You also have your own self respect. You can face yourself in the mirror. And if you don't have integrity, you will not want to look at yourself in the mirror. I have seen it over and over again. So, am I as good as my word? How do you know, or how do I know that I showed integrity? I sure didn't show perfection, right? Nobody's perfect. I have plenty of personal flaws and I made plenty of mistakes, but I do really strive to have integrity. And two places where I can tell you I applied that goal. I strove to have integrity at, maybe a loss. You could call it a loss to myself. So, one case, I'd been offered a job at a place that had facilities that would not keep animals safe. They had dolphins in pools where you couldn't move them into a holding area if they got ill without taking them up an elevator. You had escalators going over the dolphins all hours of the day where the people could just drop things in the pool. You couldn't get to the pools on all the sides, so you couldn't net things out of the water. The sounds from the escalators were reverberating through these pools and probably causing irritation, discomfort, even pain to the dolphins. There was more. There were more things that were wrong with it. Anyway, that was enough. I knew that I could not walk into a facility like that to work and believe for an instant that I could do my job to keep those animals safe. So I wouldn't take that job. I just didn't even entertain it. And you know what? I was right. Within the same amount of time, within the years that I was at the National Zoo, we lost one adult animal to a freak accident. That was it. This other facility lost half of their pinniped population to various health problems. So it's really important. I'm so glad I did not take that job. Another thing I have seen is I've seen professionals that did not practice integrity have regrets about it later. And I guess maybe because they didn't have integrity, they don't believe that others would have it. So instead of saying, gee, I'm so sorry I did this, I was wrong, I shouldn't have done this, they say, animals should not be kept in managed care because people are evil and people will do this and this and this and this to them. Well, that isn't necessarily true. I didn't do those things. And I know many other people that chose not to do those things. And it isn't right for somebody that lacked integrity to then try to shut down the options of other people to serve animals. Because make no mistake about it, animals are not in managed care just to provide entertainment for people. They're in managed cares because we need to study them, learn how to take care of them, get information from them to help animals in the wild, get their help to raise money for resources for animals in the wild. We've got issues that are facing animals that we are feverishly studying with animals in managed care. For example, the resident orcas up near Puget Sound are starving to death. How do we know? Because SeaWorld took overhead pictures of their whales in good condition so they could study what the overhead picture of a well-conditioned orca looked like, so that then when they took the overhead pictures of the resident orcas, they could see how emaciated they were. There's other things they've been doing to try to help. Now, another thing that's facing all the really everything that's adapted to the ocean that doesn't have legs, there's a common gene that's associated with not having legs that also signals that that animal lacks a gene for metabolizing pollution out of the body and into safer byproducts, getting rid of it. It is believed by a number of scientists that because of the lack of this gene and the fact that the oceans are getting increasingly polluted, that all whales and dolphins will be extinct by the turn of the century. We need to figure this out. We need to make a better future. We need to find out what we can do to help these animals. So it's important that we live and work with animals. And I really believe that our animals know that they're ambassadors between our species. They'll go out and they'll engage people. They'll play with them. They'll entertain them. They work with us, and they work with us so closely and so usefully. I remember times, for example, Maureen at the National Zoo, when somebody threw their keys in, Maureen went right down and picked them up and returned them to me. Norman, who was this beautiful, noble male, was asked to meet a little girl who had terminal cancer. She had a big tumor coming out of her ear, and they thought she'd only live a couple more weeks. So her family brought her to the National Zoo, and everybody, her aunt and uncle were standing right with her, and I went to open the door for Norman, and he came in, and I was latching the gate, and that little girl was so fast that before I latched the gate and turned around, she had exploded away from her family and run straight up to Norman and threw her arms around his incredible neck. Well, that threw Norman for a loop. But what did he do? He just raised his nose into the sky and just stood there like a noble statue while this little girl hugged his neck. Now, of course, I praised him endlessly. What a fantastic move. What a great decision. Thank you. And then, as her family called her away, like, you couldn't go up and grab her, right? That would have just possibly escalated things. But Norman at this point was targeting his head up. He was just doing exactly what I was asking him to do. And yeah, I brought the target in there, but it wasn't my target that saved the day. It was Norman's good decision. So as the little girl starts to fade away, Norman just kind of peeks down, keeping his nose way up in the sky. He peeks down and watches this little girl go away. And it reminded me of Norman with his own son. When sea lions are babies, they can swim right away, but keeping their head out of the water takes a lot of energy. I've seen estimates that say that 90% of swimming energy is used to lift the head out of the water. So this little sea lion didn't know what he was doing yet, and he's waving his flippers around and bobbing up and down in the water, and he accidentally crashes into his dad. And what does he do? Does he say, "Excuse me"? No, he doesn't. He turns around, "Arr, arr, 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 arr." And Norman just looks down at him like, "What are you saying, little fella?" And then he takes his nose and gently scoops his son out of the water and onto the beach. And then just watched him go. So Norman was powerful. And he knew he was powerful. And he used that power to show nobility. It's amazing. But these kinds of things, not only did he do with his own people, but he also did them with our people, with our children even. And we learned from Norman, and Norman learned from us. And everybody that watched Norman got to learn about his amazing character and leadership. So the importance of keeping animals in managed care is just so vast and so deep that we couldn't possibly cover it all if we talked for 2 days. But I do want to emphasize that it's not about entertainment. It's great that people are entertained. And they are so entertained that did you know that zoos are more popular than all the sports combined? Yeah. We elevate football and baseball and all that kind of stuff, but really, that's a minority interest. Everybody loves zoos. And in those zoos, we bring people and animals together so they learn to love one another and to care about what happens to one another. And we care about both parties. I care about the people that come to see my animals, and I definitely care about my animals. And so as I understand there are issues that are important, I'm dedicated to trying to solve those issues. I'm dedicated to bringing people and animals together, to finding the people that are going to be able to help solve the important problems. So let's map it out again. If you're going to be a trainer, you need to have integrity. You need to have integrity so that you will be safe with animals and so that they will respect you and so that they will love their life in your care, and you will be able to inspire others, and you will keep animals in such a way that it's a blessing to everyone and you don't have any self-recriminations or regrets. You can go to your grave knowing that you did a good job and that the world is better for the fact that you worked with animals. And in the course of bringing the animals and people together, which you can do because you have integrity, you're going to be a matchmaker. You're going to create love between these two groups that is going to benefit both sides. Okay, I know you've got to be convinced by all of this. This is important. So trainers, take heart. If you sacrifice whatever, your position even, in order to have integrity, you will never regret it. And believe me, I know all the pressures that can be brought. The fear of losing your job, the fear of losing your advancement, the fear of being able to do your job. But all of those consequences pale next to the reward of having integrity, and loving life, loving your role in life, and helping your animals and the people that you came there to serve. Okay, well, that's a kind of heavy subject. And guess what? There's more. Because I know you're dying to think about and discuss with me the question of what does it take to have integrity? What is integrity? What are the aspects of integrity? Maybe you already know. I think there's 6 different aspects, and we'll talk about that next time. Take care.
Hey fans, are you enjoying Training with Kayce? Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Kayce Covert on YouTube. That is youtube.com/C/Kayce Covert. Also, give the podcast a like, share, and comment. Thanks for joining us. Come back for more news and views on animal training and living with animals. Stay at the top of the pack with Kayce. This is Joseph Laughlin, producer of Training with Kayce. See you next time.